So everyone, it turns out I'm not crazy. Samsung themselves is claiming I'm not crazy. Some Samsung execs apparently happen to agree with a criticism that I gave them in my last video. A criticism that the majority of people, well, took very kindly. Guys are idiots. For future reference, guys, just so you know, when you leave mean comments like that, does it hurt my soul? Oh, do I feel so ashamed for daring having an opinion? No, I'm sorry, you guys look like idiots when you leave comments like that. Comments aside, I guess I wanted to clarify a few things that some people clearly haven't picked up on, be it they were actually new to the channel or who knows what. Yeah, let's clear up a few things in my whole Samsung video that I made last time. If you guys hadn't seen the video last time, it was a video discussing Samsung's latest release in terms of their watch and their earbuds. Okay, they also released a smart ring. I did not talk about that. The truth is, I don't care because I don't really see the point of a smart ring because, seriously, think about this hard, guys. Think about this real hard. What is it that a smart ring can do that a smart watch can't? Because from my perspective, the smart watch does basically everything that the smart ring can do, but more, because now you have room for a nice big screen to view that information or to control said device. Yeah, I'm a bit confused about smart rings as a concept, and that's why I paid it no attention. But my main focus on that video was focusing on the Galaxy Watch Ultra and the Galaxy Buds 3. My main complaint was basically first impressions. It does not look like a Samsung product. Neither of those products look like a Samsung product. How so? Well, if you take a look at the Watch Ultra, does that thing remind you of any other product? Anything at all? Huh? Bueller? Yes, it looks exactly like the Apple Watch Ultra. There's no hiding that. There's no denying that. The Galaxy Watch Ultra is clearly a ripoff of the Apple Watch Ultra. It's so obvious. And when you watch the reviews, there are now reviews of this product out there. When you watch the reviews, there are so many decisions about that product that Samsung made that just mimic Apple. Even when it comes to the layout of certain apps and their certain functionality, it's almost a carbon cut copy. And me personally, being a previous Samsung fan before they, well, pulled what they did with the Note 10 series and henceforth, I was very disappointed to see Samsung actually doing this because Samsung did actually have some great features that made them stand apart. And, well, they decided, no, we're not going to do that. Like, my number one complaint and criticism with the Watch Ultra, aside from it looking like an Apple Watch, from a functionality standpoint, the number one feature that defined a Samsung watch as a Samsung watch is the rotating bezel. I love that because there are some instances where sometimes your screen doesn't work so well. So it's kind of nice to have a wheel to scroll. Like the Apple Watch has this digital crown here. That's a nice thing. But on Samsung watches, the bezel around the screen would actually rotate. I loved that concept. And a Samsung exclusive feature, a feature that defined a Samsung watch as a Samsung watch, how is that missing? And I don't really know of anybody who would actually say, oh, the rotating bezel's a bad thing, other than, okay, yeah, the bezel's now thicker all of a sudden, and you can't put as big of a screen on that display because now you need room for this bezel. That would be the only disadvantage to that. Other than that, it is a major functional advantage that lots of Samsung watch wearers love. And the fact that Samsung, it looks like the rotating bezel actually should be there, but it's not. Nope, we decide, no, we're not gonna do it. We're not going to be Samsung, and we're going to release a watch that looks so freaking close to an Apple Watch. Even if you dig into the software, there are so many Apple design elements that are not Samsung specific. You can definitely tell Samsung was not being original with this watch. That was my big criticism of it. And yeah, I went on a side tangent about how I was frustrated with Samsung's constant just pulling ideas from Apple. And just, I do know that Apple often borrows ideas from other companies. In fact, that's not my problem. My problem isn't Samsung borrowing ideas from Apple, because I've often suggested times that maybe Samsung should do a few things that Apple does. Here's the difference that makes me okay with Apple's behavior when it comes to borrowing ideas compared to most of the competition. When Apple borrows an idea, most of the time it's not just a complete copy and paste. They often will try to put their own spin on it, and they take the idea and essentially look, hey, this is a great idea already, but is there a way to do this great idea even better? That's something that Apple does most of the time. They don't do it all the time. Like, for example, the always on display with the iPhone 14 Pro when that came out. Yeah, that was an Android feature that Apple decided to borrow the idea of, and they tried to make it their own, and it turned out we got balloons. And it turned out that was not a great idea, and as a result, Apple had walked back on that decision. But for most other features that are often borrowed from Android, Apple tries to put their own spin on it and tries to see if they can do it even better than what the Android competition has. Compared to the Android competition, when they borrow things from Apple, most of the time they don't try to make it their own, and it's because it's often for a good reason. Oftentimes when they try to borrow Apple's ideas, and when they do make it their own, they often make the feature actually worse. And because the thing that actually makes the feature great, well, that's what they don't want to be recognized as copying for. Yeah, they try to put their own spin on it, and it often results in it not being great because they don't understand what actually makes Apple's feature so great. And so as a result, their complete copying Apple or making their own spin on it is often a disaster. And when they choose to just copy certain design elements from Apple, it just shows we're out of ideas. It's clearly a brand thing. And yes, Apple's out of ideas too. I'm not ignoring that. In fact, in case you guys also haven't been watching this channel for a long time, you might not have noticed that I have also been complaining about iPhones for the past how many years. There have been so many design choices about the iPhone that I have been frustrated with. Part of my frustration with the Android community constantly copying Apple's designs, I have frustrations with Apple's designs, and they are clearly, blatantly stealing them. So now the design that I've already had a problem with is basically all the rest of the competition. Just so you guys know, this is the camera that I typically stare at all the time. I'm not doing it now because I'm tired, I'm lazy, but yeah, I have to make a video, so I'm not doing it professionally at the moment. But this is what I'm typically staring at, and just so you know, Apple logo. I hate this design. Ever since the iPhone 11 Pro introduced this camera module right here, I have hated it, and I have never strayed from that. I have always hated this camera bump design from the iPhone 11 series, and I am still going to harp on Apple to actually clean this up. That is something I have been consistent with since however long is necessary. And it frustrates me that so many Android devices attempt to copy something like this. Now, in Samsung's case, they don't directly copy this. Sure, they now have the each camera protruding lens design, of course, but they usually try to keep it all in a straight line until you get to the Ultra phone, and then it introduces the messy array on the back once again. And then, squared off design, the squared off edges. That is another Apple design that I don't like, by the way. I do not like the fact that this iPhone 13 Pro Max has squared off edges. I have never liked it when Apple brought it back with the 12 series, and I still stand by that today. I was never in favor of squared off edges. Apple's still doing it. I don't like it. But of course, because the Android industry is just a bunch of mindless copycats, what's Samsung doing? The same thing? Oh, and if you take a look at the latest Google Pixel rumors, by the way, which just so you know, I gave them a positive review on the Pixel 6 a few months ago when I tried out the Pixel 6 Pro for a month. Yes, I put my SIM card in that thing for a month, and I have a lot of positive things to say about that thing. Despite that, oh yeah, I still prefer the iPhone at the end of the day, but I had a lot of nice things to say about that phone. Well, guess what? Apparently, if you take a look at the Pixel 9 rumors, specifically the Pixel Fold, oh my goodness, Google, why? You were on such a roll, and now this is what you do, this is how you screw it up. Yeah, this is what I mean by my complaints on design. It's not necessarily that I have a problem with Samsung choosing this design, other than the fact that, it does look a little similar to someone else. My problem isn't it's just blatant copycat. My issue is it's bad design. I didn't like that Apple was making a lot of these decisions, like the messy camera module here, the squared off edges. There's a few other things that I'm not going to list at the moment because those will be a separate rambling. And there's a reason why I still daily drive a XS Max, despite that it's almost a 6-year-old phone at this point. You know what? It's August. I guess you can technically say this is pretty much 6 years old, and yet I'm still daily driving this thing. This is where a lot of my frustration comes when it comes to Android copying Apple features. There are some times where I do actually appreciate Android borrowing ideas from Apple, and it's because there are some good things. Like, for example, Android's nearby share. I honestly really like that. I'm not gonna lie. It's obviously a blatant feature that, yeah, Apple had it first. I like that. I do like nearby share. Now, I wish we had something like that that worked cross-compatibly between Android and iPhone instead of AirDrop is obviously Apple product to Apple product, while nearby share is Android to Android. Last I checked, I don't think you can use that with Windows. I hear some people have gotten it to work, but I've tried it with my Pixel and my Dell XPS and no success. That's at least from what I've tried. But yeah, that's an instance where Android has copied Apple, and that's a good thing. I do like nearby share a lot. And honestly, I'm not against RCS either. RCS is basically Google's interpretation of iMessage, and while ultimately, end of the day, I still think iMessage is a better product compared to RCS, I don't have much to complain about RCS, to be honest. There are good things on the Android side that obviously Apple had first. But when it comes to identity and standing out from the crowd, the reason why I judge design and appearance is because when it comes to marketing your product to someone for the first time, that first impression is key. And the first impression I got from looking at the Apple Watch this is what happens when you make lookalike products. I start calling it something that it's mimicking. This was my first thought when I looked at the Galaxy Watch Ultra. It's an Apple Watch knockoff. There's no originality to this design, and it's clearly Samsung's desperate attempt to try to beat Apple at their own game. And my same impression goes towards the Galaxy Buds as well. Sure, okay, the case has a different design lid where it's clear instead. Oh, the earbuds themselves have pretty lights on them that basically have no functional purpose. Oh, you don't put the earbuds in the same way you'd put the AirPods back in their case. Snazzy Labs did a great job reviewing these earbuds, by the way, where, yeah, he addressed that, yeah, they happen to look a lot like AirPods. And he did, honestly, one of the best objective reviews ever. If you haven't checked out Snazzy Labs' review of the Galaxy Buds 3, totally do that. I actually really liked his review, and he addressed the whole product knockoff along with reviewing them as their own individual buds. From the sounds of it, I guess they sound pretty great. I can't confirm that because I have not listened to them myself. And yeah, as a standalone product, they're fine. It's just the biggest issue is they look like a complete knockoff of another product, and that's not a good first impression you want to give people. So I'm going to wrap up this video with one last thought here that I want you guys to know. When I give criticism towards products like this, it's not just hate just to give hate. Sure, oftentimes I characterize myself and look a lot like an Apple fanboy where Apple does no wrong. Sometimes I do that, but you know what? There are some times when Apple does things wrong, okay? Like I mentioned, there are design decisions with this phone that were definitely got wrong. This is a mess. It should be cleaned up. The square edges have got to go. And this is not an iPhone 15, but the iPhone 15s, you know how they have the action button to replace the ringer switch? That's another thing I'm not a fan that Apple has decided, oops, we're going to change that. Supposedly the rumors of the 16 series, they're getting another button to take pictures. That's another concerning thing in my opinion. But when I rant on these things, it's not just to spread hate for the sake of views or attention or clout or whatever. I'm doing it because I want to see better products. Samsung has not shown me that their Watch Ultra or their Galaxy Buds 3 are better than AirPods. They don't scream, we're better. They scream, Apple must be doing something right, so let's copy as much of them as possible. And at that point, why buy the Samsung instead of buying the real thing. I don't know how to justify that. I want to see these companies improve. I want there to be actual competition. Competition is important. When this is how companies behave, where basically everyone's following basically all of the design trends of one company and they're starting to lose their originality, competition is starting to slip and everything is starting to look alike. And at that point, why bother considering any other product? Why should I consider the Samsung over the Apple product? Why should I consider the Watch Ultra over the Apple Watch Ultra? I don't see a reason why, because ultimately Apple made a smashing product and I don't see any benefits to the Galaxy Watch Ultra over the Apple Watch Ultra. And when it comes to the AirPods and Galaxy Buds 3, me being an audiophile, and again, I have to reserve judgment as I have not personally listened to Galaxy Buds 3, but Apple has a very strong track record when it comes to top tier sound quality. This track record is extremely strong. Apple has gotten sound right for so many years. That's Apple's reputation. What does Samsung have to offer other than, hey, we got these lookalikes? But do they have the reputation for amazing sound? I mean, they don't have a reputation for bad sound quality. I'm not saying that, but their reputation for sound quality is not as good as Apple's. So yeah, this is basically all I wanted to address. Oh, I forgot to mention the top headline. Apparently, Samsung's execs are not happy with this whole, oh, we're blatantly copying Apple's design trend. Yeah, they're not happy about it either. So I guess I'm not crazy like you guys are suggesting. And so yeah, I hope Samsung learns from their lesson about blatantly copying Apple and just, I don't know how else to describe it. It's truly sad to see what Samsung has done. And I want to see them return to the Samsung that they once were. The Samsung where they stood out. The Samsung where they made their own defining and very useful and very functional features like micro SD card slot. Okay, maybe that's not specific to them, but I wish that they still have the micro SD card slot. I even wish that Apple would have copied them and added a micro SD card slot to the iPhone as well. Yes, that's something that I would like. Obviously, that's not happening at this point, but that's where the majority of my criticism comes from. I want these companies to do better, and it's not from a place of hate. It's from a place of love. I was a big Samsung fan at once upon a time. My beginnings as a tech enthusiast, my biases lied towards Samsung. I was not happy when Apple removed the headphone jack from the iPhone 7 when that was going on. And honestly, I didn't know AirPods were a thing at the time, so that further fueled my bias towards Samsung. Again, I like the micro SD card slot. iPhone didn't have that. That was another big thing. Samsung also had these beautiful OLED displays at the time, which iPhones didn't yet. The iPhone 10 wasn't a thing yet. So once upon a time, back in my true humble beginnings, I was a Samsung fan. I preferred Samsung devices over Apple devices. And considering where we are in today's landscape, I'm sorry. Apple's clearly making a better phone, and Samsung's trying to basically borrow every single feature that the iPhone does for better or for worse, and there's nothing about them that stands out anymore. I can't think of a reason or anything that they do better than the iPhone at this point. And oh yeah, and Samsung happens to sell more expensive phones than Apple at this point. There's a lot to criticize with them about, but this is coming from a place of love, not from hate. I want to see Samsung do better. I want to see Google do better. I want to see everyone do better. I even want to see Apple do better. See this, Apple? You should take some inspiration from it. That's why I make these rants. That's why I do what I do on this channel. It's so that way everyone can make better products. And at least from my initial impressions when it comes to the Samsung Watch and the earbuds and such, they're not even worth talking about because they're just blatant ripoffs and they're desperate attempts of Samsung trying to do what Apple does better. And I don't like that Samsung. That's not the Samsung I like. The Samsung that I know and the Samsung that I once loved made products that actually put the iPhone in its place. They don't do that anymore, and that's sad. At this point, I'm just rambling once again. Thank you for watching. Do me a favor and interact with the stuff below. My name is DeWolf, Random Alpha, signing out.